Good morning. So if you were in class any this week, then you probably saw me begin these tulips, and I wanted to kind of work on them a little bit more and address some of the things at a slower pace now that I have some time to finish them up. So I've got mostly focused here on the painting because that's what's important. I know that I couldn't fit all of this in the image, but we're just getting her done. But anyway, I've got a few colors here. I've got the black, the Mars black, the phthalo blue, quinacridone magenta, the naphthol crimson, yellow oxide, hooker's green, primary yellow, and titanium white. So there's a lot of colors in this. But I'm going to be just kind of glazing through and just kind of finishing up some things. And I think primarily what I'll start with is this least developed flower up here in the corner. And so I'm really going to be looking to kind of acknowledge, here I'll move this over a little bit while we do that one. I'm going to be looking to acknowledge some of the things that are happening there, but I don't want to get too detail oriented with it. So first things first is I'm going to work on the shape. The shape of it looks pretty good to me. I could probably contour down some things. So I'm going to do that with the black and the green, just a little touch of each. And I'm just really going to make sure that I get rid of some of this red. Even if it's just a subtle glaze, it'll really tuck in the flower and give me an idea, because the vibrant red background is, awesome, but it takes away from the magenta color that's happening there with it. So if I can isolate closer to the flower, then it draws me into the flower, which is the spotlight. It's good to have some of this stuff peeking, but I'm just going to crisp it up a little bit just for the edges of the flower. Okay. Now I'm going to look for the deeper tones. And the deeper tones that I see are like this color here, which are like a phthalo and a magenta. It's not much phthalo at all. The phthalo is super, super powerful. And so if I come back and I just take like a little corner of that phthalo, and then I can get like a good bit of my magenta. You see how powerful that is? I mean, it's still so purple, and I only took like a little, baby amount of the phthalo. Now also, both of these colors are transparent, especially the quinacridone. So if I want it to stick, I'm going to have to add some kind of opaque color. And generally that can be white to lighten it up. But if you have like if you're using Goguen brand paint and you have the, I can't think of the color, Pyrrole, it's an opaque red, and you can use that to pull it down too, so that way you're not pulling a bright color. But I'm just testing this color, and to me it's still reading a little bit dark, and I think part of that's because I don't have a little bit of the white in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little small touch of the white and add it in there with it. Not enough to really brighten up the whole color, but just, oh man, that was a mistake. I'm not even going to touch that because that blue is going to make it out of control if I go up in there. See, I'm having to kind of be real sparing with my color, but that's what I'm looking for right there. That should be a nice opaque amount of, I can't find words this morning. I ain't had my coffee yet, y'all. Hold up, let me get some coffee. But I can't find my color, but that looks a little bit better. And see, the dark's still there, but I'm kind of glazing over it a little bit, and I'm just patching in this one petal. And my primary focus is coverage. See, I have my coffee. My coffee is here. My primary focus is coverage for that petal. I've got a lot of this transparent action going on, and so I'm trying to kind of resolve that. But while I've got my color mix that you just saw me make, I'm going to pull a little bit more of that in, and I'm going to go in and make this a little bit more solid. And again, I'm not really trying to cover up all the red, but I am trying to just get a greater proportion of it diminished, and I'm trying to make sure that there's a good, nice, full, opaque coverage amount here. And if I don't mix anything else with it, you see the magenta is kind of transparent, and it's not really leaking. It's letting that red shine through. So I'm going to pull just the tiniest bit of white. Again, not enough to really pull it up, but enough to kind of prime that. and just put it down. And now I've got a more magenta oriented tone there for those petals. And then I see it one more time down here. So I'm just going to kind of magenta that up a little bit. If that's can I use that as an adjective? I'm sure I can. Okay, so now those 3 petals are a little bit darker. Now I'm going to drop the white because the rest kind of seems to be opaque for now. And I'm going to just pull a little of the magenta with a small touch of phthalo. And I'm going to glaze over some of this, again, just to make it a little more magenta. I'm going to wet my brush a little bit because I'm getting solid brush strokes, which don't really bother me, but if I want to thin it out just a little bit, this is just a wet brush, and it's glazing because I don't want to cover up what's already there. What's there is there, so this is a way to kind of glaze and make it a little bit more apparent without covering up the material that was below it. There's a little bit of magenta up here, so I'm just going to kind of acknowledge that in a general way, closer to the top. Okay, that phthalo's getting dominant, so it made it kind of dark. So I'm going to amend that by adding a small touch of white and a small touch of the magenta back in it. And I'm just going to mix right on the canvas while it's wet. But you see I've lightened it and made it more magenta just by acknowledging that. These little pixels that are coming through means that my coverage isn't that awesome. And I'm going to wipe that away so that I can still see it. Okay. Now what I can do is I'm going to focus on solidifying this last little petal over here. And what I'm acknowledging is that there's a little bit more of a deepness right here underneath the edge of the petal. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. And then I see some more on the edge. Right around here. So I'm going to put some of that on there and just sink it down to the bottom. Okay, so now I've got a pretty overall good edge there. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more white. And what I'm going to try and do is create the boundaries for these petals. Set some boundaries, y'all. And I see like this little acknowledgement here of light. I'm trying to put that in there. And again, I'm going for the spirit of the flower. I'm not going for every nook and cranny of the flower. I'm going to very lightly, while this is wet, just kind of touch toward the center just to lighten up some of that. Okay. Then I've already got kind of a stark edge there. Now this one, I'm going to start from the bottom, work my way up, because the light is really centered down here toward the bottom. And I'm not, for this type of painting, I don't want to have like all these little ridges. If I do want a little bit more definition, I can turn the brush sideways, but see that big amount of white on there? That's going to really leave a bright mark. So I'm going to dull it down so it's like a dirty white. And then I'm going to turn the brush sideways, and I'm just going to lift up and put some of those lines in there. And then I can kind of pull them sideways just to soften them down a little bit. But that way it's not like in your face, stark. It's just kind of a subtle transition. I'm going to edge that out. My brush is getting a little sticky, so I'm just going to tap it in water and wipe it off so that I can get a little bit more of a gloss to it. That's a little bit stark white, but I'm going to keep on rolling. I'm going to acknowledge the edge of this. And I really want to put that little curve in there. Oh, and this was all wrapped up. I'm going to go ahead and fix it, because I really like the undulation of those petals. Now these are stark lines. Don't hate. We're going to fix it. A little bit more of a lightness there. A little bit more of a lightness here. Now what I'm doing is what you'll hear me talk about in class of depositing the paint. I'm trying to deposit good amounts so that I can read any bit of the light. I see a little bit of this kind of pulling down, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Pull a little bit of that down, and then I'm really feeling it, doing it a lot here. And then I'm going to fix that a little bit by doing that. And this is going backwards this way a little bit. Okay, you feel me there? Put a little bit there. Okay, I think I'm good with that. Now I'm cleaning my brush and wiping off the excess water so that it's just kind of clean and damp. And I'm going to come back and feather any of the stuff that is wet to thin it out. So if it got a little bit too thick, I can use that residue. That's why I call it depositing, is that I'm just kind of depositing a thick amount of paint. And if I work fast enough, I can use it to just tickle the edges and get a soft transition. And that's going to be a little bit easier, you know, for me to soften that out. So now I'm going to take a little bit of the magenta and I can come back and again just brighten some of this stuff up and just glaze over the white that I just put down, just for a little bit of extra oomph. I'm going to put a little, ooh, I didn't mean to go all white up in there. So I'm just going to use my finger and rub it down. I just wanted to get a little bit of this light acknowledgement here. That's the word for this morning, y'all. Acknowledge. We're going to acknowledge this tulip. Okay, so now I'm noticing that some of the areas are still purple. In comparison, they're kind of reading blue. So again, I'm just going to quinacridone it up a little bit. It's just a solid glaze of quinacridone. But all this thin little white glaze that I put on there is allowing, I'm going to block that red out. All that little white glaze that I put on there is allowing the quinacridone to stick. Before it was not sticking because it's a transparent color. So now this is giving it something to stick to. And I'm just taking this white residue that's still in my brush and I'm just putting it on there. Nothing special. Okay, now I don't want to overwork this flower because I don't know, that's not where I'm really trying to go with it. I'm going to minimize some of this white by putting some deep color in there. I'm going to put a little bit more deep up here, and I'm really going to deepen the edge here. Okay, and I got a little bit, ooh, Lord, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and come down to this sky just while I've got the dark on there. I'm just going to deepen up some of this. Ooh, this could really use it, brighten up the red. A little bit down here in between. Use my finger or brush just to clean that up. This is really dark, so the same thing, I'm going to take a little bit of white and just kind of thin that out. And then same thing here, it got all blue and it's kind of misshapen. I'll go ahead and slide that over a little bit. So I'm going to widen that up a little bit, and I'm looking at that edge and I'm like, you know, with the drawing I feel like this could come out just a little bit more. And with this, I like the boundaries of it, but this could really, it kind of sags out this way and comes down. And then I'm going to put my acknowledgement there of the white. I'm going to start from the center and work my way up so that I've got a little bit more control over where that happens. I'm going to put a little bit of light there, just it's wet on wet, so it's not, the white's not showing up. You'll find that when the paint's dry, the white will show up a lot more. But because the paint's still kind of wet, or if you see this bright white on the brush, if you just tap it, it'll turn it into a kind of a dirty white, so you don't have to go so bright so quick. I'm trying to get that little line right there. And we've already got these. I'm going to soften some of this up a little bit, just so it's not so in your face. Put some quinacridone here to brighten this guy up a little bit. This actually does have some more dark in it. Adding a little touch of phthalo, but again, I'm trying to be careful with it so I don't go off the chart dark. Dark. That's really blue in comparison, so I'm going to add some magenta there. And just use a wet brush. Again, this paint's wet, so I'm just kind of pulling in. And I just keep my paper towel wadded up just to pull some color in if I need to. And again, I'm just trying to catch, this is dark, the spirit of the flower. My goal from the very beginning was not to tighten it up, because the more I paint, the more I see. But I just want to catch a few, key points to it. And I'm going to pull just a little bit more white. And this time I am going to leave it on the brush because I want the tips to be super bright. Okay, now I'm going to make this like greenish color. That's kind of interesting to me. I'm going to pull some of that green and a little bit of the yellow and some of the magenta, obviously. Pull down, and some white. And I'm just going to kind of create some of that. Laying the foundation. I'm not trying to make it anything more than just the shape and the general value of it. I can see a little bit of it here, and I don't see it there. And I am going to take a little bit of Naphthol Crimson and bright yellow and a little bit of white to make it stick. And I'm going to create the base color for this. And it's too light, but I don't care because I need to prime the shape anyway, so I'm going for value and shape. And so I've got a general idea. I can come back here and kind of reshape a little bit. I know that green's wet, but I'm just trying to put a general shape here. again over here. That's a little bit brighter. I'm actually going to subdue some of that white. Okay. And while I'm waiting on this guy to dry, I'm going to go back through and pop just a couple of black squares in here just to really set that magenta out. I'm looking for my darkest darks in the painting and really let the edges of these flowers crisp up. I'm going to try not to overdo it. Just enough to give me some, like, you know, in your face contrast. I'm a value junkie when it comes to my paintings. I really like a lot of strong value because it makes it more, gives it more drama and depth. Take a little bit of red because that green's looking all fake. So Hooker's green and red to make an olive. I can't see that really. And again, just kind of subduing the red. This is just buying me some time while my petals dry. This is why we work the painting in phases also, because then I don't have to, you know, wait. I mean, I can just keep rolling, but I'm not destroying my progress with what I've been doing. All right, now I'm going to take, because I'm finishing up here, I'm going to take a little bit of white, yellow, and green, and I'm just going to kind of accentuate some more of these lights. Got that one. I'm going to put the spirit of that one there. That. Soften that down because it's too bright. And I'm seeing some Viridian green in there, so I'm going to put some of that. Just kind of clean my brush off with some softer colors. So I'm pulling a little bit of phthalo green and a small touch of the red too, just for kicks. And just splash it in there a little bit. Splash. Okay, now I'm coming back with red, the naphthol, the ochre, and the yellow. And I'm going to start over here with this dry guy. And I'm going to put a little bit more of the red and ochre in there, keeping it closer to the center. And I'm going to pull a little bit more red. And I'm remembering too that the red is a little bit more transparent, so the ochre's helping it stick a little more. Depositing and then using the corner of the dry brush to soften it out a little bit. And I'm using the corner of the brush. Notice how I'm using the same brush for the whole thing, but I'm turning it sideways and just dip dabbing. You may not be comfortable doing that in the beginning, but sometimes using some of those smaller brushes just doesn't work out. I mean, it's too hard to try and control the little brush. So we're putting a little bit of red here. Okay, now my green has gotten transparent on me, so I'm going to put a little bit more white in it. You can use your brush or finger just to kind of smudge out. Lord, I just dipped it up in my red. Alright, let's try this again. Just a little bit of residue. Notice there's not a lot of paint on the brush, and I'm just kind of skirting it around. And then, you know, I don't want it to come off like bright white, but I just want a little bit of opacity to really just acknowledge that that's there. There's that word again. Alright, I'm going to take some ochre and some yellow to create like a bright. I'm even going to use a little bit of white and bright yellow. I'm trying to create like a golden type color, but again, it's better to go for value and let it dry and then glaze what I need. And the further down the flower it gets, the darker, you know, the little stamen gets. So I'm just gonna